Brian McFarland here. I'm on the Upper West Side of New York City. Grew up on Long Island, New York. If we all can even just help one person to know that they're not alone and someone else out there might have a similar story, it's well worth it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joshua Evans, and this is One Moment Podcast. I'm here with my co-host today, Trevor Zalstra and Kevin Odom. We are here with Brian McFarland, and I was able to hear just a little bit of his story. I'm hoping we can kind of go into that a little bit today. But just kind of a gist of it, he's a New York City resident in his mid-50s. Describes himself as a multi-dimensional person. One of the things I liked is his experiences with resiliency and desire to help others. And so I'd love to hear more about that. But Brian, I think it's best if you just kind of say, hey, introduce yourself, tell us anything you'd like for us to know.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you, Trevor, Josh, and Kevin for having me on. As I mentioned just in our preamble, the work you guys are doing, keep doing it, because I think in collecting content and offering it out there, if we all can even just help one person to know that they're not alone and someone else out there might have a similar story, it's well worth it, right? So I appreciate the platform, and I've really been enjoying the show. So thank you. I appreciate the introduction. Brian McFarland here. I'm on the Upper West Side of New York City. Grew up on Long Island, New York, in a real nice middle-class suburb. And I bring up these points to have a sort of anchor point to reference back during the journey, because where I want to get to is from the start of what I felt were the challenges, either where I, kind of placed upon myself, or the societal impacts placed upon me, from, I would say, even before I was 10 years old to where I am now at 57. So it's been a 51-year transformation, if you will, that I plan to live to over 100. So I kind of say I'm in the second half of my life. So it took me a long time to figure it out, but I'm trying to live my best life ever. So where it all started, when I grew up as a kid, great family, still to this day, so blessed, no major illnesses, or, I probably been to the fewest amount of funerals of most people I know. So I've had a really good life and really good opportunities. And I know I've succeeded in messing up more on my own than some of the gifts that were given me. But I think where the root of my challenge started is as a young kid, like soccer. And there's a soccer ball behind me. Those who are watching can see. If you're just listening, you can see that. And that's going to play a big part in this story. When I was before 10, soccer was huge on Long Island. So I was a big kid, but I was overweight. And my soccer community was really good at what they did, and I was not. So when I went out early on to play and just be joyful and do this fun game, I would say fat shamed. Fatso. My last name is McFarland. People call me McFarland, which when you're 8 years old is kind of brutal, right? And it made me just really angry. And I found, only comment from myself, when you grow, put that ball of stress inside you. And I mentioned to you guys just before, I have COVID-19 right now. It's like having a virus that just grows. And what I've learned in life, if you, just like everything, if you don't attack that virus and work on it, right, or rid yourself of it, it will develop. And I think through the course of this conversation, I'm going to illustrate how the many viruses I've either self-inflicted or were kind of pushed upon me in not dealing with them, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades, really left. I could have lived a much better life. But now what I'm trying to do is saying, Jelly Roll, one of my favorite artists now, he had a great line in one of his songs where he said, the windshield is bigger than the rear view mirror. So you can't keep looking back at how you could have made things better, but you can learn from that and really just look forward. So with walking around with that ball of stress, right? So all of a sudden I hit, and I wasn't in the most highly communicative state. So I don't think when I grew up, I'm a lot older than you guys, it seems, there was no such thing as like, you didn't go to a psychologist. You didn't talk about your problems. Like you just didn't. That wasn't something you would do. So you just keep it all inside and it's just brewing and you don't really realize what's happening. And all of a sudden I'm 13 years old and I'm having all kinds of internal digestive issues, if you will, like really bad. And I go to a doctor and they do a analysis and he comes out and I'm 13 and he said, you are just on the borderline of having an ulcer in your stomach. You're burning a hole in the lining of your stomach. And I've never met a 13-year-old who's having an ulcer. Like, do you eat spicy food? I'm like, no, I hate it. He's like, I tell him the things I eat, whatever. He's like, there's nothing you're ingesting that would burn a hole in your stomach. So what's going on? And I proceeded to tell him, I didn't really understand, but I was always like angry and felt like when I was being teased and everything like this, like I wanted to fight, but I promised myself early on in my life, I would never raise my hand, to anyone, for a lot of reasons. And therefore, I guess I was just really stressed. So he said, okay. And we didn't really do anything with that. So I'm 13 or 14, and then bullying got even worse. I decided I've always been a musician, and that's going to play a part in this story. So I took up music when I was, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10, and I got really good at it. But I chose an instrument that's not exactly cool, which was the clarinet. So not really going to pick up girls. No shame to clarinetists out there. Holding this little case, with your clarinet in it and also being heavy. And I remember one instance when, and this was like formidable in my mind, where in middle school, I went to school with my clarinet. I didn't really have very many friends. Wasn't in with the cool crowd. And I just liked to do my thing and keep to myself. And I was carrying my clarinet and like, the handball players, I don't know where you guys grew up, but like they were the cool kids with the denim jackets and, all the pretty girls and whatever. They surrounded me and they were calling me McFarland and Fatso again. And look at the faggy guy with his clarinet. And okay, you're sitting there like, what do you do? I start crying, not the best reaction. And then one of them decides to come at me and start like wanting to attack me. So I'll never forget, like I took my clarinet case and as hard as I could, I just smacked him in the head with the clarinet case, knocked him down. And then there was like 5 of them. And I think I ran like a 4.340, to the principal's office to get away from the people that would be chasing me, and then got safe. And obviously they got in a lot of trouble, but I went home that day and I said to my parents, I am not playing this instrument anymore. All the cool kids play drums, and I'm trading this in and I want to take up drums, which wound up being probably one of the greatest sources of both destructive behavior as well as progressive therapeutic behavior in my life. So I'll pause there because I don't want to just be doing a 2-hour monologue for you guys. So I don't know if you have any questions or anything.
Yeah, no, it's just kind of a lot to unpack there. It seems like you were just kind of carrying around, those feelings of people don't like me, being bullied, things like that. You're just carrying them around, not finding an outlet for it. It sounds like, the clarinet could have been it, but apparently I'm guessing maybe the drums kind of turn into it a little bit?
Yeah. So I took over, when I say all this to both you guys, and to anyone who's kind enough to listen to the story, when I say I'm good at something, it's not meant to come across as me being an egoist. It's explaining a part of the story. And I'm the type of person that when I focus on something, I am maniacal at perfecting whatever that is to be the best that I can possibly be. So when I made that,
proud of your accomplishments and your skill, but you're not prideful. I kind of hear that's what you want to kind of make the distinction of.
yeah, well, I don't want to be like, so I became a great drummer and look at me, like,
Yeah.
I used to be like that. But now I don't want to be known as that. The reason I say it, and thank you for, the comment, is the reason I put that disclaimer in front of things is because I never want it to be taken as like, wow, he's an egotistical jerk, because that was the biggest people in my life I despised, right?
Yeah.
I'm using it more representative, as the story will go, of saying like, I got to be the best at this. Here's how I did it. Here's what it meant to me. Here's why I did it. And, I didn't need anybody. I'm not looking for anybody to pat me on the back or to be in awe of me, whatever, because everyone does great things, right? We all do. And I've definitely learned later in life that a heavy dose of being humble and humility is the best way for me forward. And it's the most helpful way, because in this second half of my life, I more seek to really serve and help others rather than, just helping myself be a fulfilled person. But that's what helps, younger people that I work with. And I'm going to, get to the facets in which I work with them. So when I started on the drums right away, that was maybe 14. I went from being the dork, with the clarinet, to cherished / hated, because I got so good so fast that and I was in a sophomore in high school, I knocked all the senior drummers out of their first positions because I got better than everybody so fast. So like, then they wanted to beat me up, but I was like, I didn't care, because at that point I had built the ability to be like, this tunnel vision of like, okay, I don't care what people think, because I'm just going to focus on what I can control. And I can control being a badass drummer. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's what the band needs. And screw these guys if they don't want to practice 3 hours a day, but this is what I'm going to do. And some of them loved me and some of them hated me, and I made the band better. And, the teacher loved me because I was setting an example for like, oh, this kid used to play clarinet, and 3 months later he's playing like the lead drum parts. Like, anything is possible.
So when you say band, sorry to interrupt, when you say band,
sure.
Are you talking about like school band, or are you talking about like friends on the weekend band? I'm assuming.
Yeah, well, there was three. There was concert band, which is like, the biggest one. So I'm playing either like the snare drum or a single part. You're not playing a drum set, if you will. And there's probably like, it's 100-person band, and there's like 8 people in the percussion section. So I was the number one person in the band from 10th grade on. And then you're in the higher level band, was called Wind Ensemble. So you kind of took out all the brass pieces, and then you played more drums a little bit. And then, and I was never into jazz for some reason. I listened, as I said to you guys, I listened to Mr. Wooten show, and I was like, I should have learned jazz. The Wooten brothers were unbelievable, because I would have been much more well-rounded. But, and then on the side, then all of a sudden I'm like, well, wow, this can easily translate over to a drum kit. And look at all the rock and roll stars, right? I was like fascinated with live music. So I was like, the drum, being in a band, excuse me, it was kind of always about getting girls, because I was so shy, and, not comfortable with my body yet. So I didn't feel like, I was like, all the rich guys or the cool guys or the handsome guys or the fit guys or the guys on the football team. They're the ones who were getting the girls. Like, I can't even talk to them. And my friends were like, fellow dorks of mine. So we had like no game. So I was always looking for like, I call it, I'm a sales professional. I always call it like angle selling. Like, I always need an angle to do something, because I'm not the guy who could walk into a bar and just go make, nice with a woman, and then he leaves with her like 3 hours later. Like, God bless the people who can do that. I can't.
Well, there is one thing, and I do want to stop you for a moment, if that's okay.
Of course.
But Josh, you said earlier the resilience, right? And so you mentioned being bullied, right? But yet continuing to succeed. And I say succeed, right? You started off playing the clarinet, then you're playing lead, drummer, all of this stuff. And just think about, right? Because bullying is a thing that, whether it's face-to-face bullying, right, in school, or even cyberbullying, the statistics behind it is pretty huge. And a lot of people let bullying or don't get into a resiliency stage, right? A lot of people don't. A lot of people allow it to affect their self-esteem, their energy, and I say energy like their goals, right? So it's interesting to actually see and hear that you overcame the negative impacts of the bullying. That's what I wanted to, touch base on right there for a moment. So, but yeah, I mean, I feel like it needs to be talked about more. Bullying. It's a huge concern and problem within our school system, regardless of gender, regardless of demographic, regardless of location, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, anything that you want to add to it.
I just wanted to ask a question, because you said something after that, essentially about focusing on what you could control. Did you have that same attitude back then?
Yeah. So great points, gentlemen. So on the focusing, it's great to actually be making me even think harder than the notes that I put down.
Sorry about that.
No, it's great. It's wonderful, because it was like, because I had I had like three guy friends, and we all lived close to each other. Amazing people. And we would always play basketball together. And we were like, we lived on the wrong side of town. We were the outcasts. We just, we didn't have the nice clothes. We didn't have cars. We didn't, but we wanted for nothing. Like, we just loved our families, and we were just happy, to be alive when we were with each other. But then when we went into the world, it was a much tougher situation. So the focus piece came from operating within that circle, because that was like my safe place, right? Where those guys appreciated like me getting great at drums, because God bless my parents for letting me play. I would play in the basement, but the whole freaking neighborhood could hear, right? And they were all like, wow, who's downstairs? Jason, John Bonham, like, what's going on there? And then I got really good at basketball, because we played basketball every single day. So the focus was on those things I can control. And then I didn't even realize I was using, back to your point, Kevin, about bullying, that we were helping each other, because we were all being bullied in some form or another, right? The internet didn't exist, so cyberbullying wasn't there, which is so disgusting now, but that's like a whole nother topic. So we, without saying it, were our own little therapy group of like, we would play basketball games, and we thought we were Patrick Ewing, or, whoever was like the latest star of the time. And so we, in our little world, we can enable that focus, and we could enable like not feeling the effects of the bullying, because we spend so much time together. But then when we go to the real world of school, it was like the wild, wild west, and we kind of still kept to each other, but there was situations that weren't in our control, because we were kind of outnumbered, if you will. But the resilience, Kevin, you mentioned, and I appreciate it, is led to somehow, I don't know, definitely much of our stuff comes from our parents and our DNA, right? My parents are just incredibly hardworking, right? Their parents, my grandfather built aircraft carriers during World War II, working of asbestos. The guy lived till he was 90. He had smoked, he had done this. He was like the healthiest person you ever knew. Like they, never made a lot of money, but just like went to work, did 14, 16 hours a day, grounded out, just kept doing it. Were resilient, like didn't have really anything that wealthier people had or whatnot, but they just never complained. So that resilience was like, I never thought about it, but it was like, there was no giving up. There was no like, I'm going to go sit in my room and pout. It was like, oh, okay, so you got attacked at school today. Okay. All right. We'll pay. You want drums? You have a paper route, earn enough to buy a snare drum, and then we'll help you out and we'll get you lessons. But you better get your butt downstairs and practice for 3 hours a day if you want to get good at it. Right. So I had these incredible role models who were doing me the best service that they could, but I wasn't explaining to them, probably like most young people at 13, 14, 15. It wasn't like I'm sitting down with my parents and going, this is how I feel. And, my stomach hurts because of this. It was just like, I kept it all contained inside, maybe other than talking to my friends about it, but pretty much not. So that resiliency, honestly, is one of the things that has made me really successful in sales, is because you can tell me no 99 times and I'll still ask 100 because I know on number 100, someone's going to say yes.
Yeah.
Right. So it's that, it's like the things that hurt people and me sometimes the most are the things that shape you, to become the best version of yourself you can be. But it's taken me till, I can pretty much say, and we're going to, I guess, jump, as I accelerate with this, and obviously stop me anytime. This transformative process where then what started to happen was, well, first off, on the body front, I started to say, well, our little group of 4, we said, well, to ward off the bullies, why don't we start weightlifting? So we put our little money together and we bought a weight set and we put it in my backyard and we just started lifting like our asses off and like eating protein and taking protein shakes. And, all of our money went into like that stuff, so we got strong fast and we got big fast. So while I didn't want to use those muscles, for any negative reason, I all of a sudden I started to develop this confidence. I'm like, okay, I'm 6'2", I'm 180 pounds as a kid. That's pretty big. Like I was a big kid, so people started bothering me less. Girls were a little more interested, overall. I felt more confident as an enforcer on the basketball court. So if you touched one of my teammates, I came up to you and, if anyone had actually ever taken me up on the, threat to actually have a fight against someone, I would have gotten killed. But because I was big enough and loud enough, like I would, take care of that situation.
The intimidation was there.
The intimidation was there. And the intimidation was out of fear, right? Of like, if I don't do this, I'm going to get my butt kicked, or my teammate is. And it also, oddly, what I didn't realize was it was a huge release for me because it got out this massive ball of stress. It made me feel good because everybody backed down, because it was with great ferocity I came up to people. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, I'm kind of a badass. Like I'm making a name for myself and I'm never actually having to hurt someone. I wouldn't want to do that because interestingly, 2 of the guys who I trained with, there was twin brothers who trained me in bodybuilding. And as I started to get better, I know I have a lot of things going on, which is why I said I'm multidimensional. In these like mid-teen years, these 2 big guys in their 20s, like I idolized them. They were huge and they both had been bouncers at a really popular bar in Long Island. So when they started training me, they said, listen, we'll train you, but you need to make us one promise. And I said, what? And they said, you can never use what we teach you to do as far as strength and lifting and your size to hurt anyone. Because what had happened, I only found out later, is there was an unfortunate night where they were bouncing and a customer got really drunk and unruly and took them on, and they escorted them out of the bar, and the customer went to swing at one of the brothers who was enormous, and just on a simple push, he pushed this guy. The guy fell backwards, smacked his head against the concrete, and he actually died. So that brother carried that around. Obviously, he didn't intend to end someone's life, but he knew then at that point, he's like, oh my God, I'm like 230 pounds, not me, him. And if I push another human being, it's, he's going to go flying. So they tempered their tone down, and they were like, if we teach you this, you have to know how to channel it, and you have to know how to use it. So there was so many lessons in there, from like lifting weights that I've kept through my whole life of like, you can, and that's why I said the egoist thing, right? Like you can build up yourself to be the best you can be, but the way in which you use it, you have to be very selective about it, because you either don't want to come across, as like I'm the best sort of thing, and you certainly don't want to come across and cross a line in a physical nature where you could actually either hurt someone or hurt yourself.
I am constantly amazed by the profound impact of sharing our struggles with each other. The one day at a time phrase helps us remember to pause. In a pulsating world, we often forget to pause. That's where One Moment Podcast began its journey, committed to nurturing mindfulness, change, and advocacy around the world, reducing stigmas associated with mental health, substance use, and suicide, and changing the way the world reacts to these taboo topics. Your voice of reason starts here. Founded by mental health professionals and agents for change, our mission is to offer insightful narratives that foster not just reflection, serenity, and insights, but to tackle the problems and solutions of mental health, substance use, and suicide on a global scale. We are making it our vision and mission to make a global impact on the mental health, substance use, and suicide crisis. It is easy to feel isolated and unheard, or like you're carrying your burdens alone. On the One Moment Podcast, we remind you that you're not alone in your struggles. There are millions of people worldwide who are struggling, and the weight of your experiences deserve to be understood. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to have a voice. The One Moment Podcast is a safe haven for connection. We have weekly podcasts. Join us to learn more about mental health, substance use, suicide, community initiatives, and much more as we tackle these global crises, creating change in the world. Change begins when we recognize there is a problem. Remember, change starts with you. Visit onemoment.chain.box to learn more about our podcast and to connect with us on social media. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels to stay up to date on our episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, One Moment Podcast. If you would like to support us, you can find the links to donate directly to us on our official site, onemoment.chain.box. You can also support our sponsors. We are presently sponsored by W Energy, The Place to Heal, Mindfully Me Counseling, PLLC, Bright Life Therapy, PLLC, and WebHash. Check our official site for more information. Subscribe now. Some photos in this ad were created by Grok.
Yeah, it sounds like they taught you some maturity and some discipline, Brian. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, they weren't messing around, but they were just. I mean, I wish I probably should see if I can find them, because they were such a huge part of my life. Excuse me, and they made me better at everything, right? So if you get to be strong and big, I was better at basketball. I wasn't a natural athlete. I was better at drumming because I was stronger and I was faster. And I've been, I've lifted weights now and exercised 6 days a week for my entire life because of them. Like it's just a daily habit, that I just have to do. So it's helped me in every facet of my life. So I really owe them so much. But I'll get to one point, I'll for those that you can view, I'm holding the famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. If the viewers can't see that, or the listeners, it's that book. It's sold over 23 million copies. So one of the most pivotal turning points in my life, but again, it still took decades to sink in, and it's still an ongoing project, was we were in our summer between junior and senior year of high school. And as far as I was concerned, I knew not as far as I was concerned. I actually was one of the best top 100 basketball players on Long Island. Not bad for a 6'2" white kid, right? Who can't jump that high. And I got invited to this camp. And in my mind, I was like, oh, I was going to get signed by Duke. And then I was going to go play for the Knicks. And my parents gave me the statistics of like, here's how many high school basketball players, here's how many college, and here's the amount of pros there are. But you don't care, right? Because you're just like, I think I can do this. But I had a huge anger issue, as we're talking about. So it was one summer, and it was our team was in its own league practicing against each other, right? Our high school team, because we were really good. And if somebody crossed me the wrong way or bumped me the wrong way, I came out and I did, almost a huge shove, but I would remember what the brother said and not do the full shove and get in everybody's face. And it was like always starting an argument and just snapping, all the time. You hit me the wrong way, or I elbowed you. Just a problem on the court. So there was a coach for the team. And about halfway through the summer season, he said, listen, and he had actually coached a player who went to the pros. So this guy knew what he was doing. And he said to me after one of these altercations, which really messed up the vibe of the team. I mean, these were my teammates that I'm like going on. He said, I need you to come to my house, which no one had ever been invited to this gentleman's house, tonight. And we'll talk about whether you're going to play next season. Okay. Wow, this is like the greatest love of my life is playing basketball. Like my future is dependent on this. So I went to his house and he actually handed me the paperback copy of this. And first off, he sat me down on his steps, and I'll never forget the conversation. And he said, what's up with you, man? And I'm like, what do you mean what's up with me? He goes, you got like a $1 million body and you got like a 2-cent head, right? He's like, you're smarter than this. Like, you're not a dummy. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, you're pushing your teammates around. People are like taking swings at you. You're cursing at people. Like, you're going to hurt someone. I can't process what's going on. And here's what I want to say. It's not a threat. I'm telling you, if you don't knock it off and figure out a way to channel whatever the heck you have going on, I'm not a psychiatrist. He was the science teacher. You're not playing next year. Like, I'm not going to have this on my team because you're dangerous and I don't like this. And this is not a good representation of our school. And it was like the most I've really had a whoa. And of course I'm crying again. I cry at like the drop of a hat. And he's like, but you have a chance to turn this around. And I said, okay. And he said, so he hands me the book. And I said, what's this? And he said, it's your assignment. He said, the way you read that book, and it tells you in the book, is you read each chapter once, you journal about it, and then you go back and read it again. And then you move on to the next one. And he goes, as you finish each chapter, I want you to journal me your review of what you learned and how you're going to apply it to your life. Okay. Goal, play basketball, way to play basketball, read the book, and figure out what the hell he's talking about. And anyone who's familiar with this book is like, these are the ways that we should, as humans, should just all live on this planet, which is, the basics of life, treating people as you'd want to be treated, listening more than you talk, which I'm not doing a good job of here. Being kind, having compassion for people, certainly not being aggressive, doing your homework about learning about someone, making people feel great about themselves. Like the list just goes on and on and on and on.
It sounds like to me, it reminds me as you tell that story, believe it or not, when I started out in healthcare as a therapist, I described myself early on as being a bull in the china shop. And, it was one of those things that, it's not that I was angry, right? But I remember being in situations at agencies, and one of the staff members had said something, and I looked at him. I'm like, dude, you can't ethically, legally do that. And so he started trying to describe to me the definition of fraud, and I looked at him and I just cut him off as soon as he got the first 4 words out of his mouth. Completely unprofessional, disrespectful, put a stop to him, right? And of course, none of that followed through as far as, what he was trying to suggest to us to do. But fast forward to today, if I had to be in that situation all over again, I wouldn't have. That would be a complete different response now versus back when. And I think it goes back into what you were saying. I had to do an internal look at myself in many situations, not just one situation. What is driving you? What is your, where's the goalpost? I think we did a piece with a guy named Terry Tucker, and he talked about what is the goalpost, right? And so this is my goalpost. Where do I want to go? How do I get there? Type stuff. So yeah, it's interesting that you were saying that, and describing that situation, and it sounds like you had a great mentor.
I mean, I was so blessed. I always look and say, and I do quite a bit of public speaking. My life partner or companion, we're trying to figure out what we should call each other, but people who are going to be together for the rest of our lives. She runs a non-for-profit that helps underrepresented high school and elementary school kids get into STEM, because they're so hard for basically minorities to get into science or technology, and they just don't have the resources that wealthier kids have, especially in the New York area. So I do a class for them.
I was just going to ask you STEM real quick.
Oh, STEM is science, technology, education, and medicine. I believe that's correct, Kevin, right?
Yeah.
Is that specifically a program in New York that's for disadvantaged youth?
No. So STEM is, STEM's like
your sciences.
I only learned it's across the country. It's like it's a big a big swath of it. It has nothing to do with.
Forgive me.
But what it is. Oh no, please. I only learned recently too.
I became curious because as a disadvantaged youth, even though I went to the smart schools for the smart kids, I kind of associate with the ideation of the bullying thing because I just wanted to fit in with everybody, and I was as smart as them, or a lot of the times more intelligent a level, and I came from a disadvantaged background. So while I was going through the hard stuff that children should not ever go through, I was developing myself on an adult level at a childhood age. So I guess I can assimilate myself with the experience that you've had. And you said you're 57.
Yeah.
I'm 54.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Born in 71, and so it's surprising knowing all the influences that you had as issues in your life that I kind of am like being described as going through the same thing. Only you were from the cool place, New York. I was born in New Jersey, so I was like automatically. And forgive any.
There's lots of cool places in New Jersey.
Yeah, and I didn't know that. I was only there for about a year and moved to where I'm from, Michigan, but I still went through the same process. And I did play basketball. I was on an all-white team, and we were all in the rural country, and everybody wanted to be the star of the team instead of working as a team. It was each individual just doing their best to make our 0-for-9 season. So it really wasn't a very cool thing to be on the basketball team. I'm just encouraged by the experience that you're talking about, Brian, because it seems like I experienced the exact same thing. Only, like I said, I came from extremely disadvantaged youth. experience, but I was still trying to develop myself into all the things that I could be good at. And I tried to be good at everything, and I wasn't. So, anyways, I just, I didn't mean to interrupt or anything, but I appreciate your enthusiasm with sharing your experience with us.
Oh, of course. And, hey, man, as long as you try, that's what we can do, right? No matter what. So, and why I brought that group up or whatnot is, I teach a class called, from my, for a lot of young people, because I always felt like when we got out of college, in college, they taught us all these things, whatever, but they didn't teach you how to write a resume, or at least my college didn't, or how to get a job or how to do an interview or anything. I'm like, why doesn't someone have a class called the business of life? Right. Like, I think one of the top three things people are afraid of is public speaking, sometimes even more than death. So I think Jerry Seinfeld, I heard a joke recently, is like, so you'd rather be in the coffin rather than giving the eulogy, right? Like, it was like, it's true. So I created this course for both adults and for kids and called it the business of life. And it's just, so now I do it. It's like a 2-hour class I do for high school students now, wherever I can. And always like volunteering, because the point is not to profit from it. It's to profit. The profit is helping people. But especially coming from what they call it is economically disadvantaged areas, right? So for example, like in the Bronx or in areas of Brooklyn, areas of Brooklyn are very wealthy, whatever. But those kids, if they're going mostly to public schools, their schools are not as good, as like the schools my kids went into, in the city. So
the scores aren't as high. The teacher to student ratio is oftentimes a lot higher. So there's a lot more students in the class per teacher. So the individual attention for each student is a lot less likely to happen on a more frequent basis. And, when you're in underserved communities, you don't have resources a lot of times. The tutoring, things of that nature, or even study groups a lot of times it's just not there because think about it, kids in high school taking public transportation, he or she can't stay after school to join a study group. They have to catch the bus. If they miss the bus, their ride home is essentially leaving. And so I think that's one of the reasons why the STEM courses, which is like science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Thank you for fixing that.
Yeah. It was. I was like, wait a minute, it doesn't sound quite right, but it's very, very close, and I couldn't remember it myself either, so I had to Google it. But that's the reason why a lot of times you see those low STEM scores is because the resources just are not there all around in either urban populations or essentially a lot of times areas where there's not a lot of funding.
Yeah. You make such a great point about the commute thing, Josh. When I taught one of these classes, I get to know these kids, like really know them because I care about them and I want them to succeed. And I don't like the fact, I'm divorced and where, we live, my ex-wife, bless her, while our kids went to public school and go to public school, she worked some angles and got them into one of the best public schools in New York City, right? They've got an edge. My son's brilliant. He might even go to Duke on a full academic scholarship, right? He did that. I'm not saying anyone handed him a gift, but he's also in a school that has a better student to teacher ratio. Study group, he walks out his door and sits with 6 kids that are down the block. He's eating well. His mom cooks well. He's not in an area where he's worried about safety. His commute is short. The point about commuting, there's one young lady who comes in from Staten Island. It takes her 2 hours each way to get to this voluntary group. And she shows up and I'm like, damn, woman, like you got game. Like you're gonna go places because I can't say as a kid, if you told me it was a 2-hour subway ride and, and three transfers and a bus and it's raining and like, holy cow, like I wish, I had a car so I could drive you home because that's just crazy. But, that's like now that's the culmination of me seeing, like, if you help people, right? The point I was going to get to through it all is we are all, again, I want to speak for myself. I am a compression of all the people that I was so fortunate to have in my life, mostly good, who took their time and imparted wisdom and mentorship on me. And I was always open to that because I always knew I had something to learn from somebody. And when I would find those people that would take that time to give it to me, because I knew they were either better than me or wiser than me, or they made more money than me or something like that, I would befriend them, truly, authentically, and ask them what made them great. Why did the boss who made 200,000 more than everyone else, like, how did he do it? How did the woman who sold more than everybody else, how did she do it? And it's like one of those simple things in life. Like, people are afraid to ask the people who are the best, like, what makes them great. And what a shame, right? Because all they want to do is tell you, I'm the best at what I do in a lot of things, and no one asks me. I start any new job I go to, and I'm like, I don't start pounding my chest, but in a quick way, you have an idea that I know what I'm doing, and I bring in big deals and all this other stuff. And then I always, like, humbly say, everyone's like, oh my God, how did you bring that in and whatever? And I'm like, humbly, just some basic blocking and tackling, reading a book like this, thinking about the client first, just like basic things. And I'm like, and if anyone, open platform, if anyone wants to grab a cup of coffee before work one day, I'm happy to hear what your challenges are, and done in a very authentic way. I can count on one hand in 10 years the amount of people who have taken me up on it. And those that do, guess what? They were the me's of the world who went on to do really better things because they were smart enough, to ask. If you think you can do it alone, like, you're not going to be very successful, because everyone else, is going to help you, if they really want to. And that's what I feel like I need to give back to these kids, because I see myself in them a lot of times. And when I go into this room and there's 30 kids and they're looking at me, and they're every race, color, creed, everything. And especially at this time in our country, some of them are very scared, of not being here very long with what's going on. And so just the fact that they're there and they have their pens and pencils out and they're willing to listen and they're willing to learn, I get so much from them that I feel like, I owe them something. And if I can impart any wisdom on for them, then I just feel like I'm really fulfilling, my purpose, which is a big part of what this book is about, right? Dale Carnegie didn't write the book to get rich. That wasn't the point. He was just trying to help people to be the best version of themselves. And I've purchased over 100 copies of these throughout my life, and just given them away as gifts. And the people who read them, they really benefit from.
So I'm curious, right? Because you talk about all of that, right? And yet you also talked about, marijuana use, divorce, and all of that. So, especially with substance use being my specialty clinically, right, and professionally, my question is how does substance use impact or influence your decisions throughout your life? I mean, because I hear you made great decisions, right? Of course, we all make mistakes. We all mess up. We all learn this, that, and the third. And I ask because a lot of people think that, oh, well, it's just marijuana, right? Well, yeah, it's just marijuana. Yeah, it might have some benefits, but we don't talk about the pros as much as we talk about the cons, and yet we don't talk about the cons enough either. So how did marijuana use, and I think they call it marijuana use disorder now in the DSM-5, but how did marijuana use influence some of your decisions throughout your transitions in life, throughout your career, for an example, or even your marriage and divorce. Like, I wanted to kind of hear about some of that.
In the heart of the city, a vision was born, not just a piece of clothing, but a movement. Vital Apparel reflects not just the raw edge of the streets, but the spirit of innovation to bring about change in mental health worldwide. It's more than a style, it's a statement, a blend of comfort with an attitude made for those who refuse to be average. Embrace the culture, ignite your passion, and wear the revolution. Discover your new favorite piece today and be part of something larger than life. Visit our link now at vtlapparel.com to grab your next outfit. Use promo code ONEMOMENT to get 15% off your order. Why support us? The founders of Vital Apparel, Hung Dao and Alex Kozub, sought out to raise awareness, seeking to change the stigma around mental health. 5% of their profits are donated to Brain Research Foundation, furthering the research in mental health. Vital Apparel sponsors the One Moment podcast. We partnered with one another so that together we can make a global impact on mental health, substance use, and suicide, saving lives one moment at a time around the world. Help us break the stigma. Visit onemoment.chain.box to learn more about our podcast and to connect with us on social media. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels to stay up to date on our episodes. Subscribe now. Some photos in this ad were created by Grok.
All right. Well, you just threw a softball down the middle of the plate, so thank you. The short answer is very badly. Very badly. They influenced those decisions. And you just nailed a whole bunch of things. So I had written down, I had a sip of beer from my dad's glass, because he used to have one beer maybe a week out of a frozen mug, and I just thought it was the coolest looking thing ever. And I remember the first time I was like 16, and I finally asked if I could have a sip, and it was like a big deal in my house, like you don't do that. And I had a sip, and I thought it was so disgusting. I was like, oh my god, I'll hate that. So I didn't touch anything. I was all about, I'm a bodybuilder, I don't put bad stuff in my body and whatever. And kids were smoking pot a little bit. Obviously the THC percentage was extremely low at that time, and that was for the druggies or the handball players, the kids who beat me up at that time. But marijuana enters the picture as I head to college, so as it often does. So I know for me, when you're pretty pure and wholesome in high school and you don't go down that path, and then you get to college and the parties are just endless and everything is everywhere and there's no parents around, and as long as you're going to study and keep up your grades, because I split costs with my parents for college, but the agreement was I had to keep up at least a B plus, and they would keep the funds flowing and I could go, so I wasn't going to mess with that. But all of a sudden, you get to this place and you're just like, as much beer as I really want. All the pretty girls are at the parties, and there's fraternities, and and the after party in the brothers' rooms at the fraternity house, everybody's smoking weed. This is interesting. Hey, there's a drug dealer on my floor. Don't even have to pay for it. So I start using that. And I can speak so deeply about this because I'm, about 450 days fully clean and sober. I now chair and head up my thank you very much. I now chair and head up my Marijuana Anonymous group meetings in New York City once a week. Being honored, I'm so honored. Tomorrow night is actually a special night because quarterly we run what's called an old timers meeting. So it's anyone with 5+ years of full sobriety from any mind altering substances. We have 3 speakers and they speak to a group, and it's when we get our biggest attendance. And I'm chairing it, so that's like a really big deal because you don't get to chair for a year, and then you get to chair, and then I've basically taken over the group and become the leader in providing service. So how it affected, the answer to your question is, how did it affect my decision making? When it came in through college, it was like, at least for me, it made me cool, right? I was a musician. I was in really good bands. So I thought it made me better musician. Everybody, smokes weed. Pre and post gig, everybody's getting high. It's just a part of the thing, right? I'm in a classic rock band playing fraternities. There's kind of craziness going on. So it kind of goes with the rep of it. And it the thing, Kevin, you mentioned perfectly, it's where everybody says, including me at the time, it's just weed. I remember the first time I tried to quit, and it took me 3 go-rounds until it was just last year when I was 56 was the final go-round. When I went to a psychiatrist to try and help me, at addiction therapist. And on my first visit, he said, "Congratulations for being addicted to the worst drug you possibly can." I was like, come on, man. I can drive on this. I can play drums on this. I can go to work on this. I can do everything on this, And he's like, exactly. He's like, if you were a white powder addict, you wouldn't function very long. You couldn't show up at work drunk, right? You shouldn't be driving a car drunk. You shouldn't be driving a car after you smoke. You shouldn't be doing any of that. But you can function on it, right? And man, I had the system down. I had eye drops, breath mints, spray. I could walk out of a job, walk around the block, do my thing, come back into the office. Nobody knew.
Yeah.
Or so I thought.
Yeah.
Or so I thought, right? Because that's the perception you give it. So I will say I went from being like, they should legalize it everywhere. Why are they doing this? It helps people. It's good for cancer patients. It makes you more creative. All the myths, right? And then once they legalized it in New York, I have to tell you, man, you walk out of your door in New York City between 6 a.m. and 6 a.m. the next morning, it's just everywhere. Everyone's walking around with a joint. You cannot, it's like offensive at this point. Weed stores pop up on every corner and then they get shut down and all this other stuff. And I will personally say, I believe the education is not there on exactly how dangerous of a substance this is, because Kevin, you probably know better than anyone, this gets in your fat cells, right? It hangs out for a really long period of time. And if you have an addictive personality, like I do, it is really hard to stop. And you go into this whole thing, we call it the 3 M's. This is not my labeling. This is Marijuana Anonymous. It goes from magic, right? Oh, wow, I'm high. I feel great. I see colors. I hear things in the music I've never heard. To medicine. I can't function without of this, right? I need this. It's like my air. I've said that to so many people in my past. And then it goes to the final M, which is misery, right? It's not fun anymore. The joy is out of it. You've made yourself an outcast, right? Your rep of being cool just went the other way. Oh, where's Brian? Where do you think he is? Right? It's not cool anymore. I definitely have a specific position on it. There are those, in the Marijuana Anonymous handbook, or there's a great book called Life with Hope. And it talks about that it's like roughly about 20 to 30% of people who smoke actually get addicted. So there are times, I will say, even now, do I wish with all the musicians I hang out, I could go see a buddy, not be driving in the middle of nowhere, nothing around, and go out and smoke a joint? Sort of, right? But my problem is, I know the next day I'd go buy some, and then that would start the whole train going again. So I even just said to a friend shortly before this call, when I was telling him where I am with my sobriety, is I've had 0 mind-altering substances in my system for over a year. It's coming on a year and a half now. And I have never, ever felt so good, so clear, so happy, so ready to embrace I have the best relationship of my life, the best relationship with my parents, with my family, with my friends. I play the best music of my life. I'm an active soccer goalie playing in like a pretty heavy duty league. I go to the gym 6 days a week. Focused at work. I've had better sales ever since I've done it. So it's like, explain to me how not using mind altering substances is a bad thing for me. Other people can do what they want, and that's great, but it's just not something that I choose to do. So when I look, and I wrote, in my 20s, the first thing I wrote was full of partying, smoking weed and drinking, selling. I'm in the advertising space, playing music, and being an athlete. So it was this multi-dimensional balancing act where it didn't make sense to some people. They're like, wait, Brian's a triathlete and he's a heavy duty weed smoker. How does that work? Like, I'd smoke before I go out and train at 6 o'clock in the morning. Like, that doesn't compute. But as my therapist always used to say, there's like the angel that's telling you not to do this. And then there's the devil that's saying, you want to do this. You really want to do this. And there's another saying that when you're in your MA meeting, the devil who wants you to smoke is out in the parking lot doing push-ups and getting ready to drag you back in. And then it happened to my demise. I'm in bands. So what are you doing, right? Pre and post gig, it's all around. Then I start working at Rolling Stone magazine for 8 years. So I start going to 50, 60 concerts a year. And guess what? Brian's got the best stuff. So everybody goes to Brian to be the party guy. And now I'm popular instead of being a dork. And, I thought it's good to be known as like the weed guy, right? So terrible, right? It was how I thought that was like a good thing. But in the day and age, it seemed like it was a cool thing, but I was unaware of all the bad decisions I was making, while I was on it, which were limiting my potential. Because all those friends that I had during those years, like the minute it stopped or we weren't together, like everything went away. It wasn't like we were bonded even more, from that. And that was like the weird relationship I had with that. I would have had better times in all my athletic events. Obviously, if I wasn't smoking, it messed up my lungs. I would have been a better father. I would have, if I was clean and sober during the years, when the kids were young. I would have been a better musician. It's like, go listen, go talk to the Guns N' Roses is running around the world right now, right? Every one of those guys is clean and sober for like 20 plus years, right? They had their time. They were wild. It's unsustainable. They are making the best music of their entire careers now that they're clean and sober. And that is sustainable. So you don't have to look very far to realize that it's a cloud of BS that you say, wow, I play this song on drums better, when I'm inebriated than when I'm not. But it takes so long to get there. And as we say in all our groups, and, you guys you all know this, it's the community that helps you get there, because nobody can do it alone. Like, you have to go to the meetings. You have to read the literature. You have to hear the stories. You have to get a sponsor. You have to really apply yourself, because it's really, really, really hard for a lot of people who are, addicted to different things. And I'm now at this point in my life, and, you never fully recovered. You're always recovering. I look at it that way. Now you just turn and pivot and go, the best way I can stay sober is helping other people get sober or stay sober, because they're helping me as much as I'm helping them. I know that was a very long-winded answer to your question, Kevin, but
that's okay. Day 448 for me today.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. I have to say that the influences that you had as a young person might have been around you, but it's crazy because both sets of parents, my parents were divorced at 3-4 years old. So I had two sets of parents, those cool hippies from the 60s, uh, that smoked weed and drank beer or wine or whatever the whole time. So those influences were what developed me into that. By the time I'm 9 years old, I'm doing all this. By the time I'm 11, I'm doing everything that full grown adults are doing, including working full time. I was emancipated at 15 because they, like I said earlier, I was kind of dismissed. I'm a middle child, so um, there's always somebody that's paying attention to the older son or the baby of the family. I'm just kind of there. So I I never thought about marijuana as anything other than like a relief because um I suffer from back pain at an early age too. So it was my way of self medicating. And it didn't last very long. It was pretty good in long time of usage, but that's been a long time ago. Otherwise, I couldn't have become a correctional professional. And I got in a little bit of trouble. Possession charge last time was I was holding some for somebody else so they could go into a Friday night boxing event. But I totally get like everything that you've gone through, but it's surprising that you were able to like not get into it until. And you said college. I'm like, man, I mentioned something earlier about it being from a disadvantaged family. I didn't come for money, and I had to start working to help the family. So the idea of even going to school or college was like, oh, that's for the rich kids, man. Those are the popular kids that can do that, and I just didn't have the resources to do it. Everybody talked about Pell Grants and all this stuff when I'm 17, 18, 19 years old, and I'm like, man, I don't have the time to do all that stuff to get into college. I just got to work and provide for myself because I was emancipated at 15, so I've been legally responsible for myself this entire time. And the alcohol part of it is the worst part for me, and that's got me into trouble where I got a bad situation going on currently. And it was my go-to to try to do escapism to deal with actual reality, and so I'm glad for my sobriety and my active programming. It's been a great 2 days. Things kind of changed in the last 2 days as well, and I have to be like a Marine and just adapt and overcome. It's a great thing because the program for me is the original one. It's the 90th birthday of their development, and every 12-step program is developed through them. And I can't say enough of the goodness of it. So I'm glad that you're able to stay clean and sober in your MA. I'm the other one, but it's all good. I'm glad because it's the strengthening from our experience, strength, and hope that we share with each other. We can share it with others so that they can recover as well. And I remember you saying you're continuously recovering. That doesn't stop throughout the rest of your life. You have to have the realization of that in order to really develop a sense of recovery and keep going at it. So thank you, Brian, for sharing with.
So well said, Trev. And I just looked at my day count. I'm at 450. So you and I are like lockstep and barrel. So congratulations. And it's amazing what you've done with your life because, talk about overcoming obstacles. You had spikes thrown in the road, way before you ever should have.
Right.
And to rise above that. And that's one of the things that always blows my mind in a way. I'm like, so many people had it way worse than me, way worse. And, a lot of them never fell into the traps I put myself in, or I always take responsibility for the paths that I chose. And, to Kevin, your point earlier, I made decisions. And when you're on a mind altering substance, by its very nature, right, you are going to make a decision you would not make were you not on such substance. that's the point of the substance, right? And I would pretty much safely say, I think everybody would on this panel would agree, the decision you're going to make when you are clean and sober will be better than the decision you will make if you're not clean and sober. So I, in all of my meetings and when I share and like I recap like some of the things that I did and said to people and relationships I destroyed. my life partner for life, we joke about it now. Like I tell her these stories. Woman's never done a drug in her life. When she met me and she had never dated someone who smoked pot, and she kind of made an exception for me. And I sold it as, well, I usually smoke like 5 times a week. So, for you, I'll just smoke like twice, or the day I'm going to see you. Like you just start making all these deals with yourself, right? You guys are laughing because you've heard the story, right? I'll make sure that I only smoke like 12 hours before you get here. Right. And of course you smoke 2 hours before she gets there, because then
it does not work.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You just have to stop.
Part of it,
laughing because
because you saw me and Kev laughing because Brian, you know exactly what they're like.
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, oh my God, dude! Listen, I hear this conversation all the time, and then you try to get people who are talking about this to okay, well, let's take it to the next step. Maybe some change, right? They don't even want to do it. It's like, no, I don't want to quit. You're sitting here justifying and lying on how you're going to use, when you're going to use, and it never works. You've already said that.
Yeah. Well,
right. It's one of the guys in my soccer thing. I mean, it's not this hardcore of a statement, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different outcome. Right. So it is, right, because she kind of went with that, and I'll use her example because she's the reason I'm sober. Because what happened with that story is like, I got divorced. I tried my second time to get sober. It worked for like 9 months, but the woman that I decided to be my rebound with was like a raging alcoholic, right? So and she hated weed, so I wouldn't smoke weed. But, no problem knocking down a bottle of wine, with her and her family. And not stereotyping, but it just was. They were like Irish. And I went to an Easter dinner and I'm no angel, obviously. I went to Easter dinner at her house, and there's 20 Irish people in the room. And, I was in an Irish band for a while. Like, so I've seen the level of intoxication that goes on at like Irish functions. I never saw something like this in my life. It made me crazy that the amount of consumption that was going on. But even that wasn't a wake up call for like, hey, and then we started to realize that the only time this woman and I, the rebound woman, ever fought was when we were intoxicated. So I finally, 6 months in, I was like, look, we can't drink together. That it does not work. I'm not saying it's you. I'm not saying it's me. We cannot drink together. So we stopped drinking together, and then the relationship was okay. But I was secretly wanting to get back to smoking, right? Even though it had played a role in my divorce, right? You just never effing learning. You just, when is it going to change? You said it, Kevin. Like when you're talking to one of your clients, you're just like, when are you going to wake up and realize if you keep doing this, you're running yourself into brick walls. Like, but the person needs to, obviously do that for themselves with the help of the community. So to get moving forward, so I got divorced. I get out of this relationship, and then I've been divorced now 11 years or 12 years. For the 9 years after, I broke up with that woman until I met this woman. Complete tailspin. I lived by myself. I saw my kids a couple times a week. I was always straight up, for them. Went on vacation with them. Did the best job as I could as a dad, and had a lot of fun with them. Coached all the kids' soccer teams. Did tons of stuff. Spent tons of times. But when I was on my own,
back like you were in college.
Worse.
Yeah.
Worse.
So progressive.
Yeah. Yeah, because now you got a few dollars, kind of dangerous, right? And you're in New York City, not hard to get anything. And the temptations are just terrible, right? And no one's putting them, I'll never say, oh, well, all you have to do is say no. True, right? No one's taking said product and putting it into your system. Like, you're making that decision. But to your early point, Kevin, is I fully believe, and I think it's backed clinically, like pot, one of the problems with it, it's a gateway in, right? I can tell you per occurrence, I would not have done X had I not started smoking on the way home from work. I wouldn't have made this decision. And then I wouldn't have made this decision. And then this bad decision, which then led to this bad decision, which led to 4 a.m. and me going, where am I? I have a 6 o'clock soccer game. And more often than I can tell you, I would have to like run home, put on my soccer gear an hour after I left said party and go pretend to be a good soccer goalie. Like, craziness. And so the kind of culmination of all this, and the person who saved me was I meet this woman who's amazing and everything I ever wanted. We met on a Hinge date where I had been going to a therapist who had really helped me a lot. And she gave me a homework assignment. It's a cute story. And I had, I tried a couple of dates over those last 9 years, and everything was a disaster, in a lot of part because I wasn't in any state to be any sort of a good life partner to somebody, right? I mean, I was kind of qualifying. I'm like, oh, you think she's a weed smoker? Like, no, I'm not going to hang out with her. Like, she's not going to be any fun. And then I swore off, dating. My therapist was a Zoom, kind of thing. She gets me, it was like, you get it free with my job for like once a week. And I was with her for about 6 months. And finally she would give me a homework assignment every week. And so I was, I was totally honest with her. So I was telling her the things I was doing, and she was pretty shocked, but she was like helping me. And she said, I have an assignment for you. I want you to go on one date by the end of this weekend. Just one. Just go on one. I'm like, I don't want to do that, whatever. So I'm like, okay, fine. I go on Hinge. I swipe whatever way you swipe when you say you're interested. I swiped 2 people, and one of them was the woman of my dreams. And she actually swipes back. And I'm like, wow, I thought she was actually fake because she's too beautiful to be interested in me. And we went on a date, and literally, like, when I gave her my first tiny little kiss on the cheek, I was like, this is the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with, right? Now, coming out of there comes the rationalization, like, oh, she doesn't smoke pot. Part of me is like, well, maybe I can convince her to. Well, she's 52 years old. She was married for 24 years. And you think you're going to drag her down that path? Like, she's not going. Like, she was a college athlete. Like, she's a mom. She's not doing that. But you're thinking that. I am. Because, right, you want everyone to come into your world. You don't want to go into their world. And then I'm like, well, if she's not, I'm not going to convince her to do that, but I can still do this, and and she'll be cool with it. Right. But then you guys, like, and you're laughing, it doesn't work. Right. It's like, she came over once and I had smoked like a half an hour before. She's like, what happened to the 12-hour rule? And I'm like,
Imagine a day where fatigue doesn't stand a chance, where clarity perks up your focus as the clock ticks on. Discover Dubby Energy, the drink that transforms ordinary moments into opportunities. With no sugar and flavors that feel like gourmet art, each sip stirs your senses, readying you for greatness. Dubby Energy is a focus energy drink that contains no sugar and is available in a variety of unique flavors. Their coffee fruit cherry extract is the star of the show. This ingredient is what makes Dubby unique and helps to provide smooth and effective focus and energy, making it perfect for anyone who needs to conquer a task. Dubby flavors are created with one goal in mind: to taste unlike any other beverage. We combine bold and unique flavor combinations to craft an experience for your tongue with each sip. Dubby achieves its smooth, effective focus with a high-end tasting experience while using no sugar, no fillers, and no artificial color or dyes. Every product they create follows the same philosophy: be effective, be clean, and taste as good as nature will allow. Use promo code OneMoment to enjoy 10% off their products. And most importantly, they sponsor the One Moment podcast. They are helping to raise awareness of mental health, substance use, suicide, and much more around the world, seeking to make a global impact, reducing stigmas and changing lives one moment at a time. Visit onemoment.chain.box to learn more about our podcast, follow us on our social media channels for more information, and to stay up to date with our episodes.
Turns out you weren't that good at hiding it.
No, well, the whole place, it smelled everything. And then finally there was an incident, I won't get into the horrific details where, did one thing that led to another thing, that led to another thing, that led to a really, really dumb thing. And she wrote me, "We're done," at 6:00 in the morning, and which I deserved to be done. And my entire world exploded. And I had a good friend of mine who I called up that day, completely hungover, and I was like, I completely blew it. He's like, told him the story. I was crying, and he said, "Wait a minute, I'm going to go back to resilience." He said, and I had sold for this guy, sold advertising. He goes, "Is this the Brian McFarland who will run through a brick wall to get anything done?" Right? To go be with his kids, to save the ball in the soccer game, to be the best drummer, to do this. Is that the Brian McFarland I'm talking to? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, "You got to make it your mission to get her back, but you need to clean up your act first at the same time." And I was like, dude, she's never going to come back. Like, it was like a felony, it was a bad offense. And he said, well, if she's worth it, then don't stop trying. So I figured out a way over the course of a short time I went to call my psychiatrist, who screamed at me for half an hour and said, because I hadn't been to him in like 8 years. And he was like, "Oh, you're still doing this and that and this and that. So 8 years later, you're still doing the same. Nothing's changed. And now you just blew this." I don't feel sorry for you, man. If you had the financial resources, I would tell you right now, go check yourself into rehab. Like, you are completely out of control. And he's like, "How old are you?" And I'm like, 56. He goes, "You should be dead right now. I cannot even believe you're not dead with the stupid things that you do." And he screamed at me. And what was the great thing that transitions to resiliency and overcoming and all the things that we've been talking about to try and make it a story, that lands in a positive place. The man screamed at me on a Zoom for free, and he's like a big time psychiatrist in New York now, for 45 minutes, and shredded every ounce of being that I was. And then he finished at the end and he said, "Are you ready to surrender?" And he kept screaming that into the screen. And of course I was crying, and I said, yes. And he said, "Then just do it. Go to an MA meeting tonight and start the process. It's 90 and 90 meetings in 90 days. Throw out everything you have in your house, right? Get a sponsor, like, get your act together. Otherwise you're going to die, right? This is not going to be a happy ending." He's like, "Forget about the girl right now. Like, you need to save yourself." So it was the next day, that was 450 days ago, that I went to my first meeting and reconciled with the woman, who basically said, "I will forgive you conditionally, right? But the baseline has to be total sobriety. I mean, you're admitting you can't do anything." And as my therapist said, she's like, "Brian, drugs and alcohol do not work with you. You just cannot handle them for whatever reason. You just cannot do it. So just know that. And if you do that, you know the outcome that you're going to have."
Yeah.
So that started that time ago, and I've never looked back, because I know my very life is conditional upon it. And then all these things just started to happen. They say in the book, Trav, all the AA stuff and everything, like, everyday miracles start to become daily occurrences.
That's right.
Right. I can tell you, I can write down 450 days, 450 things that happened that I was like, why did that happen? to me, like, I'm not winning the lottery or anything like that. That's not the point. That's not what I want. But just like, yeah, lots of bad stuff happens too, but tiny little good things that would never happen if I was still doing things that were destructive. But wonderful little things do happen, right? Like something goes my way, something, just the smallest little thing to, bigger things. They've just happened every day for 450 days. And I've never been happier in my life, and I just try and carry that message, in a humble way and tell people that, life's better this way for me. And, it's now I just look, to serve and to give back, because I feel like trying to close, wrapping what Trevor said, right? Like, I had it so good and I kind of made it so bad, right? That I feel like I owe it back to the world now, that the world gave it to me so good. And quite honestly, I screwed so much of it up that now it's time for me to pay back the system and to pay back people and say, you gave me everything. I didn't take advantage of necessarily. And now my responsibility and my joy is to bring the message of goodness and kindness and sobriety to as many people as I can, so that I'll close that thread with a great quote from a woman I interviewed on my own podcast. And she said, what she tries and coaches her clients to say is, the day you die, you don't want to meet the person you could have been. You want to meet the person who you wanted to be. And right now I got decades to go meet that person. And I think that's how I live every day. And it's just been amazing. So I really appreciate you listening to that.
Awesome, Brian. I appreciate you sharing it, especially, being willing to be vulnerable and say, hey, like, this wasn't all gravy. There's parts of it that sucked. This was my rock bottom. This is what brought me here. This was the person who helped me kind of realize that what I'm losing. And I don't know if, from a person that's listening here, I'm hearing that you say that you have like a new perspective on life due to your sobriety. Just, because you're like, I'm not winning the lottery, but yet every day it's a new miracle. Every day it's something that if I wasn't sober, I would miss. And so, yeah, it sounds like you have a new perspective. I do want to ask you a question, though, because hearing what it was like, hearing how you grew up, hearing what it's like now, what do you use in your toolkit, which is what it's often called in sobriety? It's like, your toolbox. What do you use to help you stay sober?
Sure.
I know 90 meetings, 90 days, sponsor, therapist. What have you found works for you?
So what works for me now is, very sort of a rigorous system of how I plan my day. So one of the I'm not like getting in affiliate marketing here, but one of my favorite authors is a guy named Robin Sharma.
Okay.
Who wrote The Mystery Manual. He wrote The 5 a.m. Club, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, and just these incredible books. And he's just, to me, this is an incredible person who really just wants to do what we've been talking about, make you the best version of yourself. So and he advocates for, have a system. First off, wake up early, right? So I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning, no matter what. My body's programmed to do that. As soon as I wake up, I always have pets. So pets are a big part of my life. So it's like taking care. I'm automatically taking care of my cat and I'm taking care of my fish. They need me, right? They're waiting for me. They're very social with me. So I'm already getting, when I wake up and forgive me if this sounds like too weird, but every day I wake up with my cat, and I've had cats since I've been 5. My cat is so happy to see me every single day. Her tail pops up. She's happy. Whatever happened in her day yesterday, maybe she forgot, whatever, but she just wakes up and the sun is shining as far as she's concerned. And I look at that and I'm like, why as humans do we not wake up that way? Right? Like we should just wake up and go, I just took a breath. I don't live in a war zone. I have a roof over my head. I can feed myself. I have running water that's clean, right? I don't know. There's 9 billion people in this world. There's probably 8 billion that would trade places with any of the four of us in 3 seconds. So smile your ass off when you wake up in the morning. Like that's the first thing I do. And then it's the routine of hydrating a lot, because I think personally, factually proven that it increases brain function. So tons of that. Meditation. So I have the Daily Calm app. So I listen to, a big fan of Jay Shetty. So I listen to a few of his in the morning just to get my head straight, do some breathing exercises. And then it's the decision of, I have all my little props here. So this is my gratitude journal that I just started with my life partner. And every morning I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for that happened in the last day, or 3 things I'm going to be grateful for this day. And then every month or so, we read like the last month to each other, which is so sweet to be able to do it with someone else. And I'm blessed, obviously, to have somebody to do that with. So that's the start to the day. And then every day has exercise planned. So this morning it was soccer. She was doing something else. We usually train together. You know, tomorrow we're already set up for an indoor cycling class. Sunday is like our yoga and meditation day. So those are always started in the day, because it's also scientifically proven that, you know, if you get that out, you're going to be more rigorous about it. And it's the best way to start your body that day. So by the time everyone else is waking up, like one of the places I go to on vacation is this little island off the coast of New Jersey. I don't know if you ever came across it, Trevor, called Long Beach Island. And it's like a way cool, chill sort of place, like non-pretentious, whatever. So when I used to go there, well, I still go there 2 weeks a year. I get out on my bike at 4 a.m. and the island's 18 miles long. So one way you're riding against the wind, and one way you're riding with the wind. So first off, I always turn the bike right into the wind first, make your day harder, right, before it gets easier. But the biggest thing that I get is all of a sudden I'm riding in the dark and I'm like, I'm ahead of everybody right now because everyone else is asleep and I'm already exercising. So I have an advantage on everyone. And then as I turn and I come on the way home, I time it so that the sun is rising. And I'm like, wow, I'm really ahead on everybody because I'm an hour and a half into a workout. I'm watching the sunrise over this beautiful beach. I'm embracing everything there is to embrace about life. So the rest of my day is just going to be better. I mean, yeah, things happen and, you know, stuff happens that you don't want to, but you're now much more prepared for what those things are going to be. Eating really healthy, you know, to start the day, and just, you know, looking at food as fuel, and there's just not eating to eat. And then whether if it's a work day, getting into work early, having a plan, you know, of what I've written out what the night before that day was going to be like. If it's an off day, I've already planned out with my girlfriend whether it's just a chill out day or we're actually going to do something. But everything is really kind of planned out in advance. You know, generally Sunday nights, her and I sit down and we're like, what does this week look like? So we don't, it might sound boring, but we don't really leave much to chance because we have a pretty systematic schedule of, okay, here's the, bless you.
Sorry.
Bless you. Here's the things that are going to make us happy and productive. So it's going to be hard to stray off course, especially since we have each other. And, and do that.
As you were talking, the first thing that came to my mind was an active addiction, right? And I challenge everybody, you know, listening, watching, what have you. I challenge everybody to understand exactly what you were just saying, right? An active addiction, you do the same thing every single day. You wake up, you're drinking, doing dope or whatever. Maybe you go to work if you're functioning, right? If you're a functioning addict or a functioning alcoholic, right? I know that's not the terms that's being used today, but, you know, so bear with me on the analogy or the example here. But recovery, right? Think about it. You wake up, it's a routine every single day. regardless of whether it's active addiction or whether it's in recovery, when you wake up, it's a routine that you go through every single day. Right? So that's what you just described. I mean, that's as simple as it can get.
Yeah.
Whether it's recovery, active addiction, active alcoholism, what have you. There's a lot of similarities that, people don't want to acknowledge, between a life of recovery and the life of being in active addiction. And, and I think that's one of the things I do try to work with people on, when I'm helping them, personally or professionally, to make changes in their lives, because you said that there's fear. There's fear of moving forward, fear of making decisions. I get that. Okay. And so I help them understand, like, okay, let's look at your whole life in active addiction, right? Did you not wake up every single day and make a decision, regardless of knowing the outcome or not? And then let's apply that to a life of recovery. What could it look like? What could the benefits be? All of those things. So I'm glad that you drew a picture, and Josh, that was a great question. I'm glad you asked that. So I'm glad that you were able to draw a picture for people to see that recovery isn't just a boring life. We just don't drink liquor and do dope today. That's the difference. Like, we're able to participate, right, in life. We're able to engage in life. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you just, I'm going to use that, by the way, in my share tomorrow, and credit you for sure. And also turn people on to your podcast, because if you, and what a great question, Josh, because I could take that routine and write it on a piece of paper right now, and I could change a couple things, right? Instead of Tuesday nights at my MA meeting every week, that would be, and especially if this woman wasn't in my life, that would just be an empty circle. And that empty circle would be me doing bad things to myself. Everything I told you about, I walked you through that. 90% of that would pretty much be the same to a degree, except the first thing I would do when I woke up would be, you just said it, right? The item, the paraphernalia was sitting next to me, because that would be the first thing I do before I drank the water. The last thing I would do before I shut my eyes to go to bed would be, oh, this is going to help me sleep, right? It's you would just have those things in that you had built these horrible habits of doing, right? But it takes whatever, 30, 60, 90 days to make a habit, like physically, to practice guitar every day, or to do this every day, to do this day. Well, the same thing is true with having a beer or having a joint, right? So I know for me, and I think most people I listen to in MA, sometimes the hardest part is the physical. Let's say this was a joint, right? Is, hey, when I'm walking to the subway before work for 20 years, I was doing this, right? And all of a sudden, I don't have that. Well, what's here? Like, your body's so confused, and forget about it needs the chemical. It's just the physical act of, hey, where's that thing?
It's the habit.
It's the habit, right? So that's why the 90 and 90 is there, because A, it's getting it out of your fat cells, but B, it's doing I don't need the joint anymore, right? I can listen to my headphones or not listen to my headphones and look at the world around me and not be, worried about, using my spray or my breath mints or anything like that, right? It's like, it was insanity thinking around, it was like I was going off into battle, it was like, oh, do I have my thing of Altoids? Okay, check. Do I have my think of hand sanitizer? Check. Do I have my Axe deodorant spray? Check. Okay, I'm ready. Do I have my stuff? Check. All right, I'm ready to go to work. And now I got to say, and I still go to so many concerts, I can't tell you what a joy it is to go through the metal detector and get the pat down, and you don't have to worry about anything, right? Like, I take my girlfriend to all these concerts, and I'm like, I went to the Beacon Theater. I probably went there over 100 times at this point. Probably 70 of them, I was carrying something in, right? The last 30 with her, I've had nothing. It is so joyful to be like, you could strip search me. I got nothing to worry about. Like, it's such a thrill. But then in the same breath, it's like, what's the insanity, man, that you walked in 70 times, like nervous that you were going to get busted. And you did get busted a whole bunch of times. Like, they don't, handcuff you for having weed, but they do make you throw it away and embarrass you in front of your friends, and you're hiding it in your socks and you're just doing all this crazy stuff. And you're just like, wait a minute, I was just some kid that grew up on Long Island in a normal family. Like, what happened? Like, I'm not really sure. So it's just this, you walk back in your life. And I think that's what's so important about the shares, and even what you guys are doing for me, being my online therapists here. Like, when you tell these stories and you're vulnerable, like, you realize the insanity of who you were. I'll make you all laugh, because I told this at a share. I said, I said to one girlfriend, I'll never forget this. I was like 30 years old. I was dating this woman for 6 months. And again, this is when I say that I'm saying the insanity, and why I said, please don't think of me as an egoist. One night, like, we were having a disagreement or whatever, and of course I was high. And I said, there's a lot of people that don't like me. And she's like, why? And I'm like, because I'm just great at everything. That's why. And she broke up with me the next day, right? Because, and I think about that and I'm like, did you really say that to another human being? Like, did you really say it? And you believed it? Like, like, wow, that's A, it's not true. And B, that's crazy. Like, no normal person talks like that. Like, you just don't. So, when they talk about, Kevin, like, oh, it's just weed. Well, yeah, that was my insanity but it just grows. Like, it's not because you smoked that night, right? It's because you've been smoking for so long that you just start believing your own BS, and you can come up with a statement like, yeah, I'm great at everything. That's why people don't like me. Like, come on, man. Give me.
What they call that, Brian?
Narcissism. And
I'm going to say a red flag.
A red flag.
That's what they call that in the dating world, a red flag. Like, whoa, flag on the play. Like, okay, I'm done. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, because you think about, if a woman said that to me, or anyone said that to me, I would not be hanging out with them anymore. Like,
exactly, red flag on the play.
Yeah, you're out of the game on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, I make the young people laugh in my group, the 20 and 30 somethings, because I tell these stories, in a very joyful way, like ripping myself a new one to say, buyer beware here. This is the road you're heading down. And if you don't want to tell your girlfriend that something really stupid like that, there's another of 1 million reasons why you should probably consider taking a turn and coming on the path of sobriety. But, again, it took me 40 years, and I tell them that. And I think of one of the things that hurts me in compassion. We have a couple of guys in my group that are like 17, and they've been smoking for like 2 years, and they come and we like adopt them. We like love these kids because we just want to help them, right? They're so early on in their sobriety, and it's so fragile for them right now. And I can't imagine the social pressure, at school, and it's just everywhere. You walk past the deli and you can buy it. Kids are in the bathroom hot boxing. I didn't even know what that meant. Locking the door so the teacher can't get in, and that's acceptable apparently in schools now. And this one guy, like, I kind of tried to take him under my wing, and he got up to like 70 days. And I was so proud of him. And he even told us, he's like, I get along now with my parents. I got a new girlfriend. I'm back with my group of people, just like he was rattling off all the good things that happened. And he said, but there's 2 problems. he said, I look at someone like Brian, and there's also a guy in my group who's sober 20 years, and he's like my idol, right? Like, wow. And this guy keeps coming back every week because it is a lifelong process. And he goes, and I look at guys like Brian and this guy, Joseph, and I go, I'm 17. I have no chance of making it that far. I've made it 60 days, and he already is admitting defeat. And you just listen, right? I can't say, I'm like, well, dude, this is my third time back. It didn't happen overnight for me, but you have a chance. Like, you're here, right? And he said, my second problem is my whole senior class is going to Puerto Rico for 10 days, right? Like, the kid didn't stand a chance, and we all knew it. And I said to him before he left, I said, hey, dummy, I'm sure we're going to be giving you a welcome chip when you come back. You're not your 90-day chip. And that's okay. Because if I was going to Puerto Rico for 10 days with a bunch of 17-year-olds, I don't know that I could hold out, right? So, but it's heartbreaking when you see the life that you can have, and I do have now, and you feel for it and you want it for others, because you know the path, the choices they're making and where they're going to lead. But you can't be with somebody 24/7, and they got to want to do it for themselves, and they got to want to put the work in. And all you can do is be there. And I just gave him my phone number, and I'm like, call anytime, I'll talk to you, or text me and say, I'm in a tough situation right now. And I'm not going to tell you to do it or not, but, use that last line of defense. And unfortunately he didn't. And then he came back and he was really embarrassed. And then he came back once, and then he never came back again. So that's, Kevin, you deal with this all the time professionally, right? That's what breaks your heart, because you're like, you want everyone to get better, right? They could be a better person. You guys are amazing people, right? You put your heart into wanting them to be better, but you also have to like draw a line and be like, I can only do what I can do, because, the horse to water, and you just can't make it always drink, right?
Yeah. I think it just kind of goes back to free will and autonomy. But so, Brian, we're going to have to kind of wrap it up. I've really enjoyed just listening to your story, man. Just thank you very much for sharing. And thank you very much for just kind of letting us into the world of Brian, and kind of letting us know, what you've done, what you're doing today that's worked for you, and a little bit of where you came from.
I'm indebted to you guys, and your listeners, listening to me for an hour and 43 minutes. I hope it was helpful to someone. You've been helpful to me, and your audience, and what you guys are doing, like I said, is just so really special. And just, and keep doing it. And, you're really helping a lot of people.
Thank you again for being a part of this.
Does anyone else have that one tool that makes building a website a breeze? In an era driven by digital change, WebHash is the indispensable tool that holds the key to effortless website creation. Create websites that endure, defy censorship, and bypass any single point of failure. As cutting-edge technology redefines reality, seize the power to build beyond limits. Join the Web3 revolution now and forge paths others can only dream of. Visit our site today and build your legacy. Building my own space on the web was always a grind until I hit up WebHash. Their no-code builder is my ace. It's swift and solid. It's like rocking a digital fortress that's immune to the typical shutdowns. Level up your web presence without stress. Ready to stake your claim in the digital realm? Dive into WebHash today, connect your Web3 wallet, and get started. They have multiple subscription plans, from a free version to a lifetime subscription. Check them out today at webhash.com. Most importantly, they sponsor the One Moment podcast, helping to raise awareness to critical topics in the healthcare field. Our official website was built using the WebHash platform. Throughout the projects that the One Moment movement built on WebHash, they stood behind and supported it all the way. Sign up and start building your website today. Don't forget to visit onemoment.chain.box and subscribe to our social media channels.